Big 12 standings. We're trying something new. They're going to be right above us. So anytime you want, you can look at the. They're over here. You can look at the standings. That's cool. So Big 12. Honestly, this is probably going to be the easiest conference of them all because I think there's really only 3 categories. There's the locks. There's one team that has a work to do, and there's 2 teams that are out. I think you can tell which 2 teams are out. Everybody else should very much be in, though, because this is a really deep conference. I guess we'll start at the top with Baylor. They have looked like one of the most complete teams in college basketball alongside Michigan. They are part of the 3-headed monster known as Michigan, Baylor, and Gonzaga. Everybody else is honestly a step under these 3 teams. They only have 1 loss, which was their last loss, which was a bad loss to Kansas, but they were also coming off a COVID pause. Baylor's good, guys. That's all I can say. Baylor will be a 1 seed. There is nothing that will stop that.
Yeah, Baylor is very good. I don't care how many people say, oh, they got bombed by Kansas. They came off a COVID pause. Not many people, unless you're the Michigan Wolverines, are going to come from a COVID pause looking absolutely perfect. And Baylor's been through multiple COVID pauses. This is like their second or third of the year, and it was obviously a lot longer than most. So they've been through multiple of these. It's very hard to go through multiple. Just imagine you're in the middle of a season, right? Or this one, you're even like almost at the end of the year. It's almost the end of the regular season. You get a 3-week pause. You're not doing anything. You're stuck in your house. You can't move. You can't practice. So you're losing conditioning all that time, and chemistry. Both big things for college basketball. It's not easy.
Yeah, and it's not. And college. I was about to say, college players aren't like NBA players. NBA players have their huge mansions with their own private courts that they can practice on, their own giant backyards they can run around in. College players don't have that. They're stuck in a dorm or stuck in a house.
Or because of COVID days, now you're going to be quarantined, so you can't really go anywhere.
Exactly. So that stinks. But it's Baylor. They're good. They're one of the best 3 teams in the league. That's all that needs to be said.
Yeah, pretty simple.
Moving on to West Virginia. I mean, 17-6, 10-4. They've been really good. They have obviously quality wins against Kansas. A quality win at Texas Tech. That was a big one. Quality win against Texas. Obviously, they didn't get to play Baylor at all. They're going to play Baylor next. So that'll be a fun game to watch, Baylor versus West Virginia. But, I mean, they have the resume. They have a bunch of really good wins. They actually played very close against Gonzaga even earlier this year. When they played Gonzaga and lost only by 5 points, which is really good. But
West Virginia, they have a season sweep over Texas Tech Raiders, which that is an amazing. Those are really good wins for West Virginia. They have a win over Texas after being down big time, came all the way back to win that game. That was very impressive. Like you said, they played close with Gonzaga, so that was pretty decent. Richmond's not a bad win, honestly. As weird as that sounds. Neither are Western Kentucky or VCU. As weird as those sound. But and then they also beat Kansas, so that helps too. But all those obviously are very big wins. I think West Virginia will solidly be like a 4 or 3 seed.
Yeah.
Easily
a good team. Now moving on to Kansas. Obviously have some big games. I mean, I guess they won against Creighton, who has not looked good recently. They played decently close against Gonzaga, which is why I still trust Gonzaga. I mean, Gonzaga's played some good teams. I don't know if they're better than the other 2, but they're good. Obviously wins against Texas Tech, a win against West Virginia, win against Oklahoma, and then they had that stretch where they kind of stunk. Bad loss to Tennessee, who has not looked good recently.
No.
But then after that last loss to West Virginia, rattled off a couple wins, winning 6 of their next 7, only losing to Texas, with wins against Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, avenging that game, And their biggest win of the season by far, the only team to beat Baylor. And convincingly at that. Easily a playoff team. Easily a 3-4 seed, maybe 5.
I would say 4 or 5 for Kansas. I don't know about 3, but 4 or 5 I think is fair for the Jayhawks. Played every game this year. They did not have any COVID pauses. I know they played every league game. I don't know if they played all their non-conference ones, but I'm pretty sure they played every game.
The Iowa State game was replayed. The only game that was canceled was against Tarleton Texans. The Tarleton Texans.
Yeah, well.
Oh no!
So they missed
trap
one game a year.
They missed the trap game. They missed the trap game though. They didn't have to play the Tarleton Texans. They'd be 18-9 right now if they played the Tarleton Texans. You mark my words.
Well, they do have one more game remaining against UTEP, so
that's a trap game. UTEP is terrifying.
All right, I guess we go to the next
We're going to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State obviously started the season looking all right. Bad loss to TCU early on, and then a loss against Texas. But then they started picking it up. Win against Texas Tech, loss against West Virginia, and then the big one. Once they won that Kansas game, they just looked. They started looking really good. Obviously lost to Baylor, but who doesn't lose to Baylor? And then Iowa State, big win against a now-ranked Arkansas team. Another bad loss against TCU, which is unfortunate. A big win against Texas, and then Kansas State and Iowa State. I mean, Oklahoma State might be teeter-tottering between lock and maybe in, but I think after thinking about it, they should be a lock. I mean, they have Cade Cunningham, who's honestly amazing. He's probably... I don't think there's any way he's not the number 1 overall pick next year in the NBA draft, or at least a top 2, top 3 pick, but he should be the number 1 pick. They got the potential probable number 1 pick on their hands, and they are going to be a dangerous threat. Also, obviously, didn't scroll down far enough. Their past 2 wins were Texas Tech and Oklahoma. Those are 2 really big wins.
Yeah. They still have another game against Oklahoma back in Stillwater tomorrow.
Do you see what that? They end their schedule with Oklahoma, Baylor, and West Virginia. They end the season against 7-2-10. Well, probably 7-3-10.
So a couple things about Oklahoma State. First of all, their resume is absolutely unbelievable. You beat Texas, you beat Kansas, you beat Texas Tech, you beat Oklahoma. They swept Texas Tech. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. They swept the Red Raiders.
They traded it. They swept Texas Tech, but they got swept by TCU.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you do that?
They also beat Arkansas. They beat Wichita State. All very quality wins. So, barring that their appeal is looked at by the NCAA, they will be in the NCAA tournament. Just depends on if the NCAA decides to reveal that appeal by Oklahoma State or not.
Oh right, yeah, because I forgot they're not even.
They do have the NCAA sanctions, but
right. Because
they appealed and the NCAA hasn't heard it yet, they technically still get to play in the tournament, which is weird, but
they're just like, Cade, we just want to play for Cade. We want him to play in the tournament before he leaves. All right, so moving on to the next team, we are going on to Oklahoma, who has honestly, I mean, obviously they started the season not looking the most impressive in the world, but then they just caught fire. And just slowly started rising up the rankings. I mean, the loss against Xavier 99-77 is not good. And then obviously they had they had a big win against West Virginia, and then they lost to both Baylor and Kansas. Took care of the business against the other teams. This is when they really started going. They beat number 9 Kansas, they won at number 5 Texas, and then they beat number 9 Alabama. Those are their 3. That's their biggest stretch. And then they obviously lost to Texas Tech, went ahead, beat West Virginia again, beat Iowa State twice, and then have lost their past 2 games. But definitely, again, another one of those teams. It's like, yeah, they've done enough to easily be a lock. I mean, they're ranked number 7th in the country.
They'll be dropping.
They'll be dropping. They'll be dropping. But they were still ranked highly. They'll still probably be in the rankings. I still take the Sooners as a lock easily.
Oh yeah, easily a lock. But I think as for seeding range, they're definitely going to drop like 1 or 2 after losing to Kansas State. You can't lose.
Yeah. 5. They're going to be on the 5 to 7 line. 8 at the lowest.
I don't think they go that low, but I'll put.
That's why I said 8 at the lowest. I mean, they're dropping, and a lot of teams are flying above them. So I don't know if they can hold on to a 5 seed.
It's like gonna be a 5 or 6.
I'm thinking 5, 6, 7 is worst case. 7 and 8 are kind of worst case scenarios. But
I don't see that low, but
who knows? We'll see. And then Texas. Texas has had some ups and downs. They've had some big wins, big losses. Obviously, well, actually, I looked at that and I'm like, wow, they beat North Carolina. North Carolina does not know much anymore. They played well against Villanova. Obviously, big wins against Kansas, Oklahoma State, West Virginia. Close loss to Texas Tech. And then they had a kind of bad losing streak. Not a bad losing streak. I mean, they lost to Oklahoma, Baylor, and Oklahoma State, which are really good teams. Obviously, took care of business against Kansas State, TCU. Beat Kansas again. Lost 2 of their last 3 against West Virginia and Texas Tech. So they haven't looked as good as of recently, but still easily good enough to be in the tournament. Again, I think they're along the same lines of Oklahoma as probably a 5 to 7 line.
I think they're 5 seed, 4 or 5 on it. Well, no, 5 or 6.
They're probably just along the same lines as Oklahoma. 5 to 6, 5 to 6, 7 at worst.
They'll be on the same line as probably Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Wins over Indiana, North Carolina, beat Oklahoma State. They beat West Virginia. They've beaten plenty of teams this year to get themselves into the tournament. Kansas, they have enough wins that they'll make the tournament. They've been solid enough.
Mm-hmm.
They'll make it.
No, easily. Moving on to Texas Tech. Again, I mean, they're all going to have good wins and good and bad losses. I mean, obviously a close game against Kansas was their first loss. Then they won at Oklahoma. Took care of business. The big win against Texas. Played pretty decently against Baylor. And then, obviously, their past couple games, lost to West Virginia. Wins against LSU, Oklahoma, Kansas State. Lost to West Virginia. Took a little bit of a COVID pause. Beat Texas, but then has lost to Kansas and Oklahoma State. I think Texas Tech, honestly, is probably a safer. They could get to 4 at their highest, but I still think they're probably more than likely, again, same thing as the past 2, a solid 5 to 6 seed, 7 at the lowest. But I think they have the potential to jump up to the 4 seed just because, I don't know, I just trust them a little bit more.
Well, Texas Tech is kind of like a bit of an interesting team. They have season sweeps over both Oklahoma and Texas. Yeah, Oklahoma and Texas. They swept both of them. But then they got swept by both Oklahoma State and West Virginia. But, I mean, obviously, beginning season sweeps over both Texas and Oklahoma are big time. They have a win over LSU, which is pretty solid. Other than that, they also got swept by Kansas. I didn't notice that. They were swept by Kansas, and they still have one more game against Baylor.
So again, they're in that same range that the other 2 fall in: 5 to 6, 4 at the highest, 7 at the lowest.
They also have a loss to Houston, which was decently close. So
yeah, I mean Houston's looked good. So that's it, and that's it for the locks. TCU has like a potential to be a very end of the line team. I mean, they have a couple wins. Obviously, they swept Oklahoma State. That's
they
it.
Don't have.
That's it. They swept Oklahoma State. I mean, they finished the year against Texas Tech, West Virginia, and Texas. If they can at least win 2 of those games and make a deep run in their tournament, they should be in. But they definitely have their work cut out for them to make it.
Well, losing to Kansas State is a big killer for them. You can't lose to Kansas State. That's exactly what they did. They don't really have a lot of non-conference games to look at. I mean, Liberty actually has been taking off lately.
Yeah, Liberty won their conference. Wait,
but
yeah.
Liberty is looking pretty good. Obviously, a season sweep over Oklahoma State is very solid, but then they have no other wins. They were swept by Kansas. Mm-hmm. They lost to Baylor. They blew their opportunity against Missouri. They lost to Texas. They blew their opportunity against West Virginia. But like you said, they have 3 opportunities against Texas Tech, West Virginia, and Texas to end this regular season. Mm-hmm. Win at least 2 of those, and they're in a pretty good position. Make a decent run in the Big 12 tournament. Well, pretty much exactly what you said. Make a decent run in the Big 12 tournament. You find yourself in a very good position. If you win all 3 of those games, I think TCU has a very strong chance of making the tournament with beating all 3 of them. But I don't think they're beating all 3 of them.
And now let's pay tribute to the 2 teams that will not make it. Kansas State, the Big 12 killer, losing 169 to Baylor. And then somehow upsetting TCU and Oklahoma, really sinking TCU's chances and just making every Oklahoma fan in the world question why they still exist. Sorry, Kansas State. And then Iowa State.
They just suck.
They literally have lost every single game possible besides like Jacksonville State and UAPB. And they have not really been close in very many of them. They put up a fight against a COVID Baylor. But other than that, highlights of the season: 105-77 loss to Iowa, 95-56 loss to Mississippi State, 97-64 loss to Kansas.
They're
they're bad. That's it. No, they don't have a Big 12 win, and they have a chance though. They play Kansas State to end the year.
Yeah, they can win one, and then we'll have to win the Big 12 tournament just to get in, and they won't. So, sorry.
What if they did though? That would be terrible. That would be just horrible. But anyway, don't mention it. But anyway, that's the Big 12. That one was a lot easier. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Peace.